Hey everybody, this is Javier. This is Planet Texas. I have Miss Marlene Godsey. Miss Marlene Godsey, she has a program which talks about DEI. Her program is called Navigate Cultural Connections. Miss Godsey, did you want to start by talking about your life?
Yeah, hello. As Javier said, my name is Marlene Godsey, and I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you for having me on. And I created a program called Navigating Cultural Connections, and I really feel like it's easier to talk a little bit about my story and kind of just what brought me here to creating this program. Um, I grew up in a larger city in a bigger community, and I always loved growing up in a big city because I never quite felt like the color of my skin was going to affect me or hold me back or I was going to be excluded. Not saying that larger cities are perfect. I just always felt welcome and included in a larger city. And so in my early 20s, I had a family member who moved up north to this smaller community, and they invited me to go along. This was way back before we had smartphones. And if you were even lucky to have internet access, you could maybe get on a computer. So I moved to this area, knew nothing about it. And right away, when I got to this new area, I suddenly realized the color of my skin was a problem and diversity and differences were not accepted in this area. And so I ended up finding out that the area I moved to was where the Aryan Nation originated. And so I was there for about a month, and somebody said, "Hey, don't go downtown. There's an Aryan Nation parade happening." So, of course, I went and I watched from a safe distance in my car with the doors locked. And I saw flags with swastikas and this, march and celebration of hate. And right then, immediately, I felt unwelcome and scared and pissed off. Right. And I knew I wasn't going to stay in this community. I right away knew I had to do anything I could to get out of this community. And so fast forward about 7 years, I was working in city government and I was an arts and culture specialist. I was back in a bigger community in a big city. And I specialized in cultural community events and festivals. And so I always made it a goal to make sure that people always felt welcome and included. And I always give a voice to those that didn't have one, because I never wanted anyone to experience or felt the way I did in that small community in my 20s. And so I did that for a really long time. And eventually I left the city and I decided to move to a smaller community again. Even though I loved the city, I wanted to raise my son in a smaller community because I have a beautiful 4-year-old son. And I didn't like the cost of living and the traffic, the things that go with the big cities. So my family and I packed up a U-Haul. We moved to a smaller community again. And right away, and when I say smaller, there was about 100,000 people there. So it was not that small of a community. But right away, I knew that the color of my skin was once again a problem. I right away could feel that diversity and differences weren't accepted. And I knew that once again, it was going to be a struggle. So I got a job working for the city there. I was the arts and culture coordinator for the city. And immediately I realized there were no relationships with any cultural organizations or communities, no programs for anything outside the dominant demographic. And this community had a large culturally diverse population. The Latino population was like 25%. So this right away was a red flag. And I decided, well, I'm here in this community. I'm going to try and make a difference, start making progress, start creating relationships and programs. And so I spent the next 2 years doing that, partnering with smaller events, elevating existing events, creating a Hispanic Heritage Celebration event with some local organizations and communities. And then we left. We decided we weren't going to raise our son in this community. We didn't want him to be negatively influenced. And we also didn't want him to experience being excluded because of the color of his skin. So we moved back up north. And this time we chose a community that was accepting of diversity and differences. And when we moved, I decided I no longer wanted to work for other people. Instead, I wanted to teach other people how to be successful in equity work, how to create relationships and programs. Because during my time throughout the last decade in this work, especially in that smaller community, I asked a lot of questions. And I asked why these relationships didn't exist. Why were there no programs? And what I heard over and over again was, we don't know how to do the work, or we've tried to do the work and we were unsuccessful. And so I realized people can't really help. Well, no, they can't. They can't help at all, who their parents are, where they're raised, where they're brought up or how they're brought up. But what they can do is they can make changes in their future. So what I did was I thought, well, everybody takes those diversity equity trainings, right? But when those diversity equity trainings are over, and when I say everyone, I mean everyone who works in a professional environment, city, government environment, county, state, federal, we've all taken a ton of diversity equity trainings. But the problem is when it's over, most people don't know what to do, right? If you're sitting there waiting for these cultural organizations or communities to come knock on your door and say, hey, we want to partner with you, or we want to create this relationship with you. And you're like, oh my God, this is it. I've got all this equity training from these 10 classes. I'm going to pull it out. I know what microaggressions are, right? If we wait for that opportunity, it's never going to happen. So what I created is a program to teach people how to do the work, a step-by-step program, so it's practical. So you can go from step 1 to step 6 and start having these relationships, creating programs, and actually making real progress in this equity work. So that's why I created this program, to make sure that, well, I shouldn't say to make sure, to try and make changes, and try to help professionals and business owners and employees and event professionals by teaching them how to do this work and not just giving them the tools, rather showing them how to use them.
Well, DEI is going to take time. It's something that's still relatively new. Like it's something that, I'm not going to say was out of thin air, but it's something that is needed, something that is need to be trained. And it's still somewhat fresh in everybody's minds. Like they don't quite understand. They don't quite get it. Even I, from time to time, don't quite understand what's going on with.
Well, and it's intimidating, right? It's very intimidating, and people feel uncomfortable. So a lot of times when people feel uncomfortable, they don't take action. They just kind of put their head in the sand and continue on doing things the way they've been done, because they don't want to feel uncomfortable, because they don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And so that's where I'm able to help them get past that and to give them real life examples on what to do.
So I know a lot of the bigger companies and even some of the smaller companies are now prioritizing DEI.
Yeah.
Like, why is that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'll put it like this. Smart people are prioritizing DEI, right? Because, well, let's start out with a statistic, right? And I love this statistic because it kind of wakes people up. So the U.S. Census predicts that by 2045, that's only 20 years from now, 21 years if we want to get really specific, the Caucasian non-Hispanic population will no longer be the majority in the United States. So they will now be a minority. And the African-American population is set to increase by 30%. The Hispanic population is set to increase by 60% in 20 years. And the Asian American population is going to double. And this is just 20 years. So it's kind of easier to ask, how can you afford to not do this work? But I mean, realistically, some of the things you need to think about is hiring, right? You need to have a diverse hiring pool because there's so much talent out there being missed. And with the way things are changing, you need fresh perspective and new ideas and problem solving skills. And you need new marketing avenues, right? So you're marketing your products, your programs, your business, whatever it is that you do to a wider demographic. And then when you have, new employees, or if you have existing employees, you need to make sure your employees are happy, right? You need to make sure that they see that you celebrate and respect their culture. That way you have less turnover, you have higher productivity, and you have happy employees. And I think, one of the big things people don't think about is you really need to penetrate the market. And so what I mean by that, and I really hate that term, but what I really mean by that is no matter what you do, whether you sell shoes, you manage a bank, you own a bank, you do events and programs, you need to make sure that whatever it is you do or sell, you're tailoring it to a diverse demographic. Because if you're only tailoring your products, your programs, whatever it is you do to a homogenous demographic, to the dominant culture and the way things are changing, you're not going to survive the changes in this world, right? You're gonna dissolve with the rest of the world because you're not going to be selling and tailoring your products to the entire community, to the majority in this community, in this country. And I think probably one of the most important things that I really try to instill in people is you need cultural competency. Things that were acceptable, and they were never okay, let's get that right, but things that were acceptable, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, hell, even 5 years ago are not acceptable now. We've all heard of cancel culture, right? So things that were acceptable just 5 years ago are not acceptable now. And so if you don't have cultural competency, if your employees, if your staff, whoever you work with doesn't have cultural competency in this globalized world, you're not going to make it. It's going to affect you. It's going to dissolve your business, and you're not going to be successful, not with the way the world is changing. So I love when people ask that question, because I think it's so important that it's almost like asking, why do we need to continue to pay our bills? Why do we need to continue to get a paycheck or drive a car? Because it's just the way that things work, right? And things are changing.
Well, like, how do we reach out to the cultural communities and even the organizations? Like, how do we do that? Like, can you give us like some steps and examples of how do we, as regular Joes, just regular nobodies, reach out to figure out exactly how do we do that?
So if you're just looking from not from a trying to get new employees or hiring, and I want to market to a wider demographic, we can get to that in a minute, but just how to reach out in general, like there's a lot to that, right? But one of the easiest ways, and this is what I try to teach clients, if you have like 10 minutes or you have one day, the easiest way to reach out to cultural organizations and communities and start making real progress is start attending their events and programs, right? And so when I say attend, I don't mean, if I use the bank example a lot, because this is the one I come up against a lot, is banks, right? Banks are always trying to do cultural outreach because they want the whole community doing business with them. So one of the things I use as an example, right? If you see an event come up, let's just use Cinco de Mayo because it's right around the corner, right? They're celebrating this weekend. So say you're a bank and you're like, great, I want to do outreach to the Hispanic community, to the Latino community. So I'm going to go to this Cinco de Mayo event. I'm going to pay and have a booth there this weekend and bring a bunch of swag and put it on a table, free water bottles, sign up for a free checking account and get $300. I'm doing great outreach to this community, right? Negative. That is the worst thing you can do, because guess what? You're just going there with your goal in mind. All you're doing is going there to get more business for your bank. They know you don't care. Sure, they're going to come get your free water bottle or your little keychain. You might get a few people signing up for that checking account if they qualify, because that's such an exclusive offer, right? It's not inclusive. But the reality is no one's going to go from that event, from the Latino community, and be like telling their cousin how phenomenal this bank is because they had a booth at the event, and you got to trust, whatever bank it is because they were there. Instead, you got to look at it like that, right? You're just trying to get more business. You're just trying to serve yourself. So you got to start looking at these relationships as, how can I serve other people? I call it a service relationship. How can I serve this community? So if you don't have time and you're like, you know what, I just want to start making progress now, this is what I recommend. Like, say someone's listening and they're like, oh my God, Cinco de Mayo events this weekend. I really want to start making progress in this. Go to the event, take your family, go to the event, take some business cards with you, right? And make a goal. So if it's a large event, maybe say, I'm going to go to 10 booths that are representative of cultural communities, right? You're not going to go to a booth that's US Bank or Wells Fargo or, City Market, Fred Meyer, whatever grocery stores you guys have in Texas. You're going to go to something that's representative of a cultural community. And you're going to go up to those booths and you're going to be, hi, my name's Marlene. I manage X, Y, and Z Bank. I am so excited to see you here today. I'm really interested in learning more about your organization and finding out how I can get involved. Can I sign up for a newsletter or an email list? And can I get contact information for either you or someone that leads your organization? That's it. If you got a business card, leave your business card. Get all the information you can. And do that with several booths there. If you're feeling bold, go to all the booths. If you're good at small talk, have small talk. If you like someone's earrings, tell them you like their earrings, right? Learn how to do these things. And then when you're done, I don't want you to just leave. I want you to stay at the event, right? Have some fun, have some food, listen to some music, learn a little bit about the culture, right? And if your family did come and you have any good conversations at any of those booths, I want you to go back over there with your family and introduce your family to them. Just say, hey, whatever, I had a great conversation with you. I just wanted to introduce you to my wife and kids. or my husband or whoever it is. Introduce your family, because family is vitally important in cultural communities, right? So that's a huge sign of respect. So introduce your family, have fun. And then the next business day, reach out to anybody you got information from. Remind them who you are, how you met them, and say, I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee and get to know a little bit more about your organization. And that's it. That's all you got to say. And that will literally, you will get positive interactions from that. You will have people say, all right, great, let's go have coffee, and try to make it a casual meeting. Try to say, can I go out and meet you for coffee? Can I buy you lunch? Try not to say, can you come down to my office? I want to talk, because then it turns into business, right? And then you once again cross that boundary of serving yourself, not serving others.
It's just that easy.
It's that easy to start. Yes, it really is.
Well, good. So I'm going to ask you, I know it's a controversial question. I had gone over it with you before, but I'm going to ask it now. Because normally this question is asked, and it's just used to take shots. It's just used to degrade people. But why do they want to do a DEI hiring when they could just simply hire the best person for the job? What is the difference?
Yeah.
Why is it so important? And why do people make it sound so disrespectful when they say that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's flat out disrespectful when you say that, right? Because what people are insinuating when they say that is that the DEI hire is not the best person for the job, right? So no one says that you should find the person that's not best for the job and try to find someone who's not of dominant culture, right? That's what we're saying, right? In plain language, we're saying something that's honestly pretty racist and pretty awful to say. But here's a better way to look at this, right? How do you know that you've advertised this job, marketed this job, offered this job to a wide demographic? First of all, how do you know that you've offered this job to everybody if the only people that are applying for this job, interviewing for this job, are of the dominant culture? And when I say dominant culture, up now, at least for the next 20 years, I'm referring to the Caucasian, non-Hispanic demographic.
Yeah, you could say Caucasians, white people. It's
white people. I don't want to disrespect.
Well, I mean, you could just say it, and if it.
Okay, well, I'm referring to white people.
Yeah. If people get disrespected while watching this, then oh well, this is part of having the conversation.
It's a blanket term, but if you are saying, why can't I just hire the person best for the job, you're referring to white people, and that's the only people that are applying for your job, interviewing for your job, or making it through any of those processes, then you're not being equitable in your hiring processes. You are not reaching out to everyone. You are not making sure that you have a diverse, broad array. You're not broadly sending out your job ads. You're not having a diverse panel. What I see, and this is the thing that I see, and this gets to me. In America, we have this quote unquote professional thing that we go off, right? The way you dress, the way you talk. And what this caters to is the average white person, and actually sometimes it could be a non-white person, but it works for the average person that went to high school, goes to college, gets out of college, gets a job. A lot of times they have social wealth that helped them get that job in the first place, right? And they end up in this position that they're probably not the best fit for. They're probably not that qualified for, but because they had this trajectory in their life that led them through this circumstances where they know how to answer certain questions. They know how to use big, complex language, fancy words. And it doesn't mean that they're better for the job. It doesn't mean that they're smarter. And a lot of times I see people like that get jobs and they bomb those jobs because they are not the best fit, right? So there's simple things you can do to make sure that you are distributing your job hirings to a wider demographic. If you don't have a certain amount of culturally representative people, people representative of cultural communities applying for that job, then you didn't do your job properly and you need to reopen that job. Okay. And then we have these archaic hiring systems on top of that, right? We get people in these horrible situations where they're already nervous. We expect them to wear these fancy clothes and come in and we spit like 20 questions at them, and it's such high pressure and there's 4 or 5 people sitting across the table from them. Okay. And you're nervous. You're stressed out, you're sweating, you can't think straight. You have to answer in the United States professional way, because God forbid you use any of your, your normal language, your native language, especially if you're bilingual or you're from another country. Oh, you already have it stacked up against you. So people are missing this amazing talent because of these archaic hiring systems, because of this archaic way of advertising jobs. And then working in city government for a long time, this archaic way of filtering through applications. Companies use resume systems to filter through applications and cover letters and just look for keywords. And if you don't have those keywords, you just go in the no pile. You know how many great people you're missing by doing these systems? I've been in those job sifting roles 15, 20 times where they say, just look at the cover letter. And if they don't have keywords, or if they didn't answer that question exactly to what was on the job ad, put it in the no pile. And you think I'm going to do that? No, I'm going in the resume. I'm going to start looking. I might even call you if you didn't answer something right, because it's an old system that's created to exclude people, right? And so, long story short, I guess I'm not answering your question completely.
No, you're fine. You're answering the question.
Yeah, you're not hiring the best people unless you're being strategic about your approach. You're making sure that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, because I know that instead of saying the diverse hire, you're hiring on potential. It's really what you're hiring on.
Yes.
But we don't use that. We use the term diversity hire because they happen to be a minority.
Mm-hmm.
When we used to hire them on potential where they didn't quite know what they were doing, but you knew that there was going to be a big payoff because they were going to catch on. That's one of the things that we don't do anymore.
Yeah, is train, right? We expect people to come in with all the skills and knowledge, but we can't train them, bring them in. And I actually work with people with an emphasis on cultural communities. I work with people. I do resume and interview training too, because and it's interesting that you brought this up, because when I went to college later, I went to college when I was 30. And when I graduated college, I had so much trouble getting a permanent professional job, and I kept getting passed up for jobs. And I kid you not, after I think the second or third interview I got passed up for, and I knew exactly what I was doing. I had the exact degrees. I was like, what is happening? The hiring manager reached out to me privately and said, hey, I want you to go see this friend of mine. I think she can help you. So I'm like, okay, who is this woman? This Latina woman. I'm like, cool. I give her a call. And she works with women minorities to teach them how to talk professional in our
Well, no, you know what? Matter of fact, I got a story. I have a story for you whenever you're done.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so I got my certifications through Coursera, matter of fact. That's where I got it. So I was in there with my Google interviewer. This was I went to another interview when I wanted to transfer from law enforcement into the IT technology. But one of the things that's going against me is my age. That's one of the things. And I didn't find that out until I was done with the interviewer. And the interviewer was not like a young 20-year-old. I'll tell you about that one. But this was like an older gentleman at a smaller company. And then once the interview was over, he just flat out told me that, hey, we're going to be looking elsewhere. We're not looking to hire you. And then I'm like, well, why don't you just tell me why? And he's all, honestly? I'm like, yeah, honestly. You're not going to do nothing? I'm like, no, I'm not going to do nothing. He's all, well, you're just too old. You're just too old to start. That's what they told me. He didn't hurt my feelings because I had asked him just to tell me the truth. And this is at Google, mind you. But he's been doing it for so long. He's somewhat in the same boat as me, or even you, matter of fact. Yeah. You went to school at college. I didn't go to college till later in life. Yeah. And that's just one of the things. Well, I wanted the truth, and he told me the truth. Mm-hmm. And then he pointed me to the direction of who will give me an opportunity, which was not one of the top tier companies, but one of the startup companies, which he pointed me to the right direction to get started. And I did get my start into it before they started doing cuts and things like that.
Oof.
But yeah, no, I completely know what you mean.
Yeah. It's brutal, right?
It is.
Going
It
in
is.
somewhere and knowing that you're qualified for something, but getting discriminated against, whether it's your age or your race or your gender. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
horrible thing, right?
and I'm not even holding it against them because, like, I already know I'm old, and I'm just like,
But you're not old. You're
eh,
40 years old, right? I mean,
yes, I
that's
am.
not old. I mean, that's
Well,
that's
it's old for what they're looking for. It's old for
yeah,
what they
yeah,
want. They want some young 19-year-olds, some 20-year-olds that have
yeah.
the ability and like the unawareness of being like, I consider you as a man, you should live by yourself. If you're not taking care of a family or another person, you really shouldn't be doing the roommate thing. I think that's just kind of a once you get to a certain age, you have to stand on your own feet. But they
Mhm.
want to start people at low pay. They want to start people, and I'm willing to do that. But I'm not willing to do that anymore until I'm out until I retire.
Yeah, yeah. And jokes on them. You get to retire soon. You get to
Yeah, no,
retire
yeah.
early.
I just have to make it. I just got to make it until I get there.
Yeah, you make it.
Mhm. So we're going to discuss your program. So your program is, let me find it. Your program is called Navigating Culture Connections,
Navigating
and
cultural connections. Yeah.
it is a DEI cultural inclusive trainer is what you're coming out as.
Mhm.
So, Ms. Godfrey, what exactly is your program, and what is it that you do?
Yeah. So the program I created. So as I was saying when I was talking about my story a little bit, um, I realized that people just don't know how to do the work. And so I realized that the diversity equity trainings we have now give great information. They're wonderful. They work for certain things, but they don't always work for people that are Caucasian or people that don't have exposure to different cultures, really, when they're trying to create these relationships, because people are uncomfortable, they're scared, they don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And I'm very honest in my program that my program works for people who want to do the work. My program is not a good fit for someone who's trying to do the work because their boss said they had to, they're going to get fired, right? If you're secretly racist or you secretly feel that things should be the way that they are, this isn't for you. So what I did was I broke down my years of experience, what I do, how I'm successful at it, the things I've learned, and I broke it down into a 6-step program. And so what I did was I gave people a literal practical program that they can follow from step 1 to step 6, and then I even have a step 7 for event professionals, specifically how to adapt and adjust events and create new events and elevate existing events for event professionals or people that want to do events. That's step 7. But the 6 steps take you from the very start. What do you do? Why do you even want to do this? How do you even determine that? And then it takes you through, what do I need to do? What do I prepare? Then what do I do in the meeting? And it takes you through all these steps so that you can adapt and adjust the things that you're doing, the way that you're doing things. And there's all these outreach opportunities through the way. I talk about I share lots and lots of stories. I leave names and cities and all that stuff out of it, but I share all these stories, all these experiences I've had, all the rooms I've sat in, the things I've learned and I've seen over the years. And so it's very practical, and it's an easy way for professionals to follow this program and learn how to actually start making progress right away and start meeting people and making connections and creating these real relationships with cultural organizations and communities from day one. So it's a great program. And I made it in different formats because I wanted it to be accessible to everyone. I wanted it to be accessible to the community engagement or event person just graduating from college that has very limited funds, or I wanted it to be accessible for the nonprofit organization who has a limited budget and just wants to get the training so they can teach their staff over and over again. And then I do in-person trainings for larger organizations, for groups that have employees that want to learn how to do this. So I have coaching programs. I have 1-day webinars that are like 4 hours long. I have 1 week training, and I have a training manual I created that I also sell to people as well.
And we can get all this from your website, or is all this from your website and your program?
Yeah, so on my website, it has more information about my program. There's lots of testimonies and reviews on theirs, and then people can reach out with their individual concerns and what exactly they're looking for. Or if they just have no idea what they're looking for, but they just want to make some progress, they can just reach out to me. I always get back to people within a day or two, and we'll have a conversation about what their needs are, with, what's the size of their staff, or is it just them? And then we go from there and figure out what the best route is for them.
And do you have anything else you want to add before we actually end this episode?
Not really. What I do want to mention is that, we talked about why this is so important, because the way the world's changing. And I just want to say that when communities, groups of people feel excluded, left out from your events, from your programs, from your business, whatever it is that you do, when people feel excluded, communities feel excluded, it's really, really hard to come back from that. When I went to that Area Nation Festival in my 20s and I saw that happening, I wanted out of that community so quick. There was nothing that anyone ever could have said in that community that ever would have changed my mind, right? And I even had trouble making any friends there, because I was always like, how can you like this place? They have these Area Nation festivals. You love this place. You live here. You raised your family here. And so once you feel excluded, it's really hard to come back from that. So I think it's so important to do the work now, right? And learn how to be successful in the work now, and start making those relationships now, so that you're making sure your programs, your products, your store, whatever it is you do, is inclusive and safe and welcoming of everybody. Because as we said, in 20 years, you're going to be in trouble if you're not doing this work. So that's all I really wanted to say. We're stronger together. We are definitely stronger together.
All right. So I'm Javier. I have Miss Godsey. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being on.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I hope everybody goes out and attends a cultural event, maybe this weekend. And if you do, visit me on socials, message me about it, and let me know how it went. And if you experience anything negative, I will personally stop. Let's talk about it and let's figure out what went wrong. But I know you're going to have some good interactions, and I really would love to hear about it. So thank you, Javier. I appreciate the time.
Yes, ma'am. So everybody knows, all the links and descriptions, everything is going to be in the details. So if you want to be part of our program, it's going to be there. If you want to know where our website is, it's going to be there. Anything and everything. That way you can get in contact with Miss Godsey.
Thank you.